Good morning, everyone. My name is Stephen Thomas Story. My wife is Amy Grant Story, sitting in the back. I want to thank her for working with us this morning, and I want you to be aware that she is in the back with study guides and manuals that we would hope that you will want to take home with your families today. The things we'll talk about here can change your whole lives. The way you make decisions, the way you plan for the future, the way you think about your neighbors, the way you think about our country, and all the things that are in store for us coming up in the future. This is Zion Life Foundation, also known as Seven Pillars Foundation, which is a public charity. Zion Life Foundation has a mission. The mission is really to help prepare people to live the lifestyle of a new millennium. And the way we do that is what we're going to talk about today. But before we begin that, let's take a look at this picture. What does it remind you of?
A bygone era.
A bygone era. Something that's no longer existent, isn't it? Those two towers came down very suddenly the next morning. The very next morning, the whole world was watching this scene. On television, from wherever they could see it, the whole world knew about this in our land. Since that time, do a quick spiritual evaluation of our nation, of the United States specifically. You could go to the world beyond. Real quick evaluation. How long did it take the United States? How long did we pray together after this event? Did it unite us the next day?
Yes.
It did, didn't it? The whole country. In fact, much of the world was united on our behalf. Some were happy over the event, but others were united on our behalf as well, praying for this country, because it could have been them too. It could have been. How is our nation demonstrating faith in God now? Since that time, is there a greater faith or lesser faith in God today since 9/11? Less. It's interesting, isn't it? Has greed, dishonesty, immorality, and corruption increased or decreased?
Increased.
It has increased since that time, hasn't it? Is the U.S. still the world's largest producer of pornography?
Yes.
It is. Of all types and brands and disgusting variations. Is the rate of violence and murder gaining momentum? It is. Is friction and division increasing? Do we see it in politics, in society? Do we see it in our communities? It's not far away, is it? In fact, every day we can see it. Every day we can hear about it. Every day we can experience it if we're not very careful. Which direction are we going in the country since 9/11?
Worse.
We're going down, aren't we? If any of you have ever read the book called The Harbinger by Jonathan Cahn, it gives an interesting view of a comparison between ancient Israel and the United States. Ancient Israel being a nation of judges that was set up by God. The U.S. being a nation also of judges set up by God. And the two compared in what's going to take place with them. What happened in ancient Israel is a comparison to what is prophesied to happen in this land, in this nation, which is kind of a scary point, isn't it? My wife and I, with our 12-year-old daughter, attended the UN about a year ago, this same time of year. We went to a commission on the status of women for about 2 weeks, and we were there as part of a committee for sustainable families. That was a very interesting experience for the 8 days we were there. We attended sessions, live sessions, with women from Ghana, refugees out of Afghanistan, issues over sustainable families. Here's a meeting that I attended, which was about governing our own families, governing our local communities without government interference and control. At the end of this, I had a couple of minutes where I was able to speak. And in those 2 minutes, the entire course of the whole 1-hour meeting changed. Everyone got involved, heads were nodding in agreement, and suddenly everybody realized we all want the same thing. It was an international audience from all over the world. We had people in Australia, from South Africa, from Asia. We had them from China, England, and the U.S. All over the world were in that room, all nodding in agreement. They all want the same things. They had the same kind of values. What do we do? They are all there at the UN. Every session we went to, they were all there looking for the same thing. How to be united? How do we find peace? How do we create assurance and security for peace for our future, for our children coming up? What are we to look forward to in the world we're living in now? This is what we found out is the real intent behind the scenes at the UN. To achieve world government, it is necessary to remove from the minds of men their individualism, loyalty to family, traditions, national patriotism, and religious dogmas. That's Brock Adams, director of the UN Health Organization. That is what UN law and international law is working to achieve eventually. Why? Because they cannot achieve their Sustainable Development Goals for 2030 without doing this. That's pretty serious, isn't it? That's pretty serious change, and they want this for worldwide. The UN is not about one nation, it's about all countries around the world. Someone once said, a very famous figure we're all familiar with, that there are forces in the world today that are interested in overthrowing the freedom of all nations, all people, and right here is where they're writing the international law to accomplish it. Let me give you one example only. This is one out of 164 Sustainable Development Goals for 2030. That's what it is slated or planned to be put into practice. That's their goal. It's Agenda 21 on steroids. This is just one of them. By international law, the United Nations would enact a new sexual human right, overriding parental consent and objection. This sexual human right would require all children and youth ages 0 to 18 and beyond, if they want it because of a human right, to receive a lifetime phased education in comprehensive sexuality. That's facilitated by Planned Parenthood. Comprehensive sexuality is exactly what that word means. And there is no end to the imagination today in what that can mean and be to our children in the future. If we came under international law, this would be in our future. And it's only one of the 164 goals. And all other 164 would be enforced by international law if that comes about in our future. That is on the plans. It's on the table right now. So what else is being done since that time? Are there other people like those I believe who are in this room who want peace, who want unity, who want solutions, who want answers for the future, who don't want nuclear war, who don't want all the conflict, who don't want all of the turmoil that we are anticipating, who don't want all of that which is prophesied since ancient times? We went to what was called the Parliament of the World's Religions about a year and a half ago. Amy and I attended this. It brought 10,000 people to Salt Lake City for the first time back in U.S. soil since 1993 when it was in Chicago. At the time before that was 100 years earlier. There have only been about 6 of these parliaments. These parliaments were designed to help bring people of all faiths and spiritual realities around the world together. Help them unite, help them find respect for each other, help them get along. It's a good direction. It's a good thing. What this showed us, we watched people from all different types. 50 different religions were there. No, I'm sorry, 80 different religions from 50 places around the world. This was how important it was for these people. Yes, they brought their individual religions and their presentations, but they want peace. They want peace. This is where we met. Craddy Corner from Temple Square, historic Temple Square in Salt Lake City, is where the Parliament was being held. So on Friday evening, we held not a talent show, but a night where they could perform. And they brought all their children together from all different faiths on stage. It was one of the performances. This was 5,000 people, standing room only. I sat on the steps. I couldn't find a seat. All over the world, they came together in that tabernacle. Why? Because they want peace. At the end, they sang the song, Peace on Earth. Starts with me. Okay? It starts with me. That's what they're talking about here. One of the other sessions that we attended here was a discussion on nuclear arms. Nuclear arms is a big concern today. It's a big political issue, big social issue. It's an international concern as to who's got nuclear arms and what they will do with them. This discussion was, how can we address this issue as a society of religious people, of spiritual people, people that want peace? The discussion thanked God that nobody had pushed the button. The discussion said we should pray and continue praying for that. The discussion said we should be concerned about that for the world's sake, the people's sake, the economy's sake, the environment's sake. In the end, 1,500 people exited the meeting. And as we walked away, I walked alongside of a couple. The man was streaming in tears down his cheeks. He was distraught, saying to his wife hopelessly, "What are we going to do?" They don't have answers. They don't have solutions. This is all talk. We have to do something. He was literally distraught in hopelessness over what he saw in the meeting as no answers. And they didn't have. And I thought to myself as I listened to him, what would I have said in their place if I were on that stage? What would have given hope to that same audience of 1,500 people from people all around the world? I thought quite a bit about that. And I realized, oh my heavens, after 9/11 we're going downhill. After the UN, I don't believe we're going to find hope with the United Nations. After Parliament, we've got the people on the right track. They want it. They're like us here. They want peace. They want security. But they don't know how to find it. I thought, what would I have said? I would have said exactly the message we're going to talk about today, and for the next couple of hours or so after this until 12:15. Today we're going to talk about the only way, the only possible way that we can have peace now and prepare for the times that are coming ahead, whatever they may be. It's the only way we can reduce it and minimize the effects of the future as much as possible, to have as much possibility for peace and unity and respect in the world. It's also the only way we can really prepare for times if we cannot achieve that. Raise your hand if you believe that all the nations of the world suddenly are going to end nuclear arms threat. I don't see a hand in the room. You don't feel hope for that? You don't think Russia and Pakistan and Iran and Israel and US and anyone else you might be thinking along the line are just going to drop their nuclear arms program? You don't think it's possible that someone might want to push that button just because they're crazy enough to do it, or feel threatened enough to do it? See, they didn't feel that way in that same room either. The whole room, 1,500 people, none of them felt that way. They're just like you. No hand would have raised for that. They don't have faith in the political leaders of the world today. They don't have faith that conflict will end. In fact, they're so frightened of it, even men streaming in tears had no hope. Here is the way we'll deal with that. What if we could find peace right now within ourselves, our spouses, in our families, in our communities? What if we invited others to do the same in pure love, trust, and cooperation? All those with whom that resonates. Like at the Parliament. They started it. They began it. But when they finished, they all went home back to the same thing they were doing, and it wasn't continuing. They had the same concern on their mind. If we could have that kind of a spirit, together in that spirit, we could unite around common values, living by the golden rule. Does that sound good? Common values of love, humility, faith, hope, charity, kindness to one's neighbor. Can we do that even if we're of different religions, different colors, different nationalities? Is that possible? We saw it at Parliament. It is possible if we choose to do so. How many people in the world do you believe are willing to do that? Do you believe there's a fair number? Are there thousands, perhaps millions, perhaps even billions who might be interested in that? I believe there are. I absolutely believe they are. We can help each other face and endure and overcome all kinds of hardships. We can prepare to survive and triumph over any raging storm of the future that might come up. It won't matter what they are. We could help each other endure. But can we do it alone? Do you think in the future, if things get as bad as it could, as is possible, as prophecies talk about, do you think one person will be able to stand alone?
If they had Jesus Christ with them.
If they had Christ with them, you say? Okay, I believe that. Does Christ want us to stand alone?
No.
So if He doesn't want us standing alone, what do you think He wants us to do?
He wants us to cooperate with other people, and He wants us to depend on Him.
He wants us to cooperate and depend on Him. I'm going to acknowledge God right now and ask your help and your prayers that He will help us with the rest of this keynote and with the next couple of hours. This is very important to us because it's not just this group. This group is a fairly united group. You have common faith, common religion, common values. But the days will come when people will come to this group for help. They will come to this group for refuge. And this group will have to unite together for the same refuge to each other in love, trust, and cooperation. The time will come when one family will not be able to stand alone either. It won't matter how much food storage you have. It won't matter how many guns you have. It won't matter how well ammunitioned you are. The day will come when we will have to either stand and fight by the sword every day or group together, bond together among those who are pure in heart. What means honest in heart? Those you can trust. Those who will be honest and who will care about their neighbor. Those who will look out for one another. This is a wonderful group to be able to start thinking of that idea because you're here already gathered on common values. You're here already because you can work together. The day will come when your survival will depend on that. Not just yours, but the whole world. The day will come when this formula right here is what everyone will have to live by. They will have to love each other. They'll have to be able to trust each other, and they will have to work together regardless of their race, color, or creed. Now that is going to require some stepping up, isn't it? For the world we live in. Is it going to put us to the test? Are we going to grow from that? Do you think we will learn how to love more or less by doing that? More. There's no other way to accomplish it. We'll learn more. Is that what you said God wants us to do?
Yes.
Group together, cooperate together, and it means He wants us to love more? He wants us to love each other more. He's going to give us an opportunity. So this is not a curse. It's an opportunity, isn't it? It's an opportunity that enables us to gather together and try something and do something which God wants us to do, but which opportunity does not necessarily afford, or perhaps motivation is not sufficient to really make it come about. Do you believe in a concept called Zion? I believe you've heard of it. I've heard of it since I was a child. You know, there was a trilogy of movies that came out not long ago. I saw an edited version of these movies where it was a sci-fi movie where, there were some machines that came into the planet Earth and they took over humankind and they battled for a long time, and humanity finally lost that war and had to go into refuge underground. And the rest of humanity that wasn't, they were put into battery fields and made to supply energy to the machines. Well, that was called The Matrix. The Matrix called that place of refuge in that set of movies, the Hollywood movies, they called it Zion. A place for humankind to have refuge. A place where it was real. A place where they could be safe. The only place they could be safe. That was interesting when that term was used in that movie trilogy those years ago, because that is the oldest term used in the Holy Bible of the Old Testament, in Genesis, that describes the lifestyle we're talking about, which is why we are Zion Life Foundation. Seven Pillars Foundation is a DBA, and the 7 pillars, these 7 pillars right here, are what support it. Those 7 pillars are the highest principles and values people can live by. They're categories in which all goodness, all truth, all wisdom are found. Doesn't matter where it comes from in the world. I don't care if truth comes from the Bible, from the Quran, whatever truth, wherever it is, fits within these categories. Those principles and values are universal. In all of Parliament, we never found a single person there from anywhere in the world who disagreed with them. They all embrace them. They all love them. And it all resonates with every one of them. They are what create peace. They're the governing principles of all truth, wisdom, freedom, personal growth, happiness, prosperity, problem solving, conflict resolution, addiction recovery, emotional stability, and peace of mind. You can have all of these things out of these principles if you understand them and how to use them. They're the keys to unlocking the power within us to create LTC relationships. That's love, trust, and cooperation at home, with friends, in business, in community, and government. It doesn't matter what level of relationship it is. Those principles make it possible to achieve everything. But these keep getting in the way, don't they? These are 7 chains of conflict and bondage, just the opposite of those 7 pillars. The 7 chains of conflict and bondage do just opposite. They give us all trouble. They create all problems. These are the tools of our adversary. They are the voices of our adversary. These are what we fight a battle against from the time we're born to the time we die. And why? Because it's an opportunity. God gives us an opportunity. This is not a curse. It's an opportunity to face what we need to so we can learn what we need to. To face opposition so that we can have that opportunity to learn what comes to us when we face opposition. Just like the trouble in the world we face today is not a curse, it is an opportunity to those people who look to the 7 pillars, to those people who will look to love, trust, and cooperation, to those people who will look to God and ask for help and say, teach me how to be the man or the woman or the youth that I need to be. Teach me how to love like you do. Teach me how to be a neighbor to my neighbor and love them like I love myself, and learn how to love them like thou dost love them. These principles right here are chains. I call them chains because they bind us. They bind us down. They take freedom away. They control us. These are what cause all trouble in marriage problems. What is the marriage divorce rate today? It's over 50%, but it's higher than that really, because how many people aren't even marrying anymore in the world? Because they see it as a hopeless case, a hopeless cause. There's so much divorce, why do it, right? They don't understand how important that is to God. Nevertheless, people get stuck in these chains. They get stuck in the chains and they want, almost like they want to be unhappy, but they don't want to be unhappy. Everyone wants happy. They all want peace. They just don't know how to find it. The reason they can't find it is because they don't understand those chains. They don't understand the pillars. They don't understand their true nature, their true characteristics. The true nature and characteristics of those 2 sides is like learning how to know both sides of a battle when you go into it. If we went into World War II and didn't have any intelligence about what the enemy was doing, what would we have done? You got to know your enemy, don't you? You got to know what they're doing, why they're doing it, how they think, and what their purpose is. So then we can combat it. We can frustrate the plan of the enemy. This enemy we're fighting here wants us to be unhappy. He wants us to be severed in our relationships. He wants to divide and conquer. That's an eternal principle. If you want to conquer something, you divide it, you weaken it, and you conquer it. That's what the chains do. They bind us down, they divide us, and they conquer us. They make us weak so that we can be conquered. Knowing, get this, we're going to talk about this for the next hour, hour and a half. Knowing how to identify and unlock hidden chains of false belief is the most powerful knowledge one can obtain in this world and the universe beyond, I will say. There is no greater gift you can have, no greater power than that right there, because that determines everything you will decide in your life. All decisions made. It determines the future wherever you go. 7 pillars and 7 chains side by side. The pillars are keys. They unlock the opposite chain across from it. They're infinitely more powerful. Humility is the answer for getting out of pride and stubbornness. Always, every time, without fail. No exceptions. Same thing. Truth and wisdom is what shines a light on a dark room of falseness so that it flees. Truth and wisdom is what governs all 7 of the pillars. It must. Because if it doesn't, the rest of those pillars become servants of the chains. If falsehood governs the rest of those pillars, then the pillars will camouflage the falsehood so we get deceived, tricked, conned, scammed, drawn into things without realizing where we are. So we must know truth and wisdom. How vital is it to know it? Our lives depend on it. Our physical and spiritual lives both. Faith and trust unlocks fear and doubt. Sacrifice and obedience, idleness and rebellion. Forgiveness and letting go makes all the prior pillars worthwhile, because if you don't take that step number 5, the first 4 don't matter anymore, do they? Resentment and bitterness. All of these have emotions that come with them, don't they? Do you know the emotions of resentment and bitterness? Can you recognize them, what they feel like? Have you felt them at some time in your life? Perhaps you can think of a relationship right now, a moment, an issue right now, where you still feel it, where it still brings up those feelings. It could be a past event that still plagues you today. I knew a man once who had served in World War II. He was trained in the military to hate the Japanese, to hate them like all of his guts, so he'd be willing to kill them. And 45 years later, he was still sitting there with that hate in his heart. He didn't know how to get it out. It was ingrained so deeply he could not get the hate out for those Japanese people. He was taught that they were the scum of the earth. You kill them. And 40 years later, he was still hating them. He was sitting at church talking about it, wanting a way to get rid of that hate. There's the answer right there. The opposite of hatred here is love, charity, selflessness. But before you can do that, you've got to have all the rest of those steps. And not everyone knows how to just choose to love someone. They need to first choose humility, then the truth. They've got to see why. What is in my head? What is in my heart that's preventing that? These principles start with beliefs. We create everything in our destiny by what we believe in. We believe that we're not good enough. What do we do with that belief? We don't do anything. It hinders us. It cripples us. If we believe that we are infallible, that we can make no mistakes, that's called overconfidence, arrogant pride, or self-righteous pride, and it sets us up for a huge fall later on. Very deceptive type of a chain. That person who thinks they can do no wrong has probably had a great deal of success in what they do. I used to teach Forex trading, and the worst possible thing a person could ever do is be overconfident with a fabulous trading strategy they had, because that trading strategy would eventually have a fall. And the person who was so confident, so sure of it, would not see it coming. They would not see it coming. They're being set up the whole time, and they have a horrible fall, terrible losses. The same principle applies in life. People get overconfident. I've been there. I know that feeling, and it's a hard one to recognize until you've had that fall. And then you recognize what you're blind to. You see, the chains blind us to the false beliefs that are already planted in our minds. Do you realize every time you have a negative emotion, that is a symptom of the chains. A symptom, because why? Two verses I'm going to give you from Scripture right now. One is, the truth shall set you free, right? We've heard it so many times, common. And the other one, by their fruits you shall know them. Let's go back just a little bit here. By the fruits of each of these principles you'll know them. And I'm going to focus in on pillar 2 and chain number 2. By the fruits of truth you will know it, and by the fruits of falsehood or deception you will know it. All chains are founded in false belief. All pillars are founded in truth and wisdom. The adversary likes to mix those up together to make it as difficult as possible to tell them apart. He wants us to overlook things that are not good. He wants us to overlook the little falsehoods, the little red flags, because there's so many things that look good among the pillars. He wants us to feel the warm fuzzies of these 7 pillars, so we'll overlook the little bit of falsehood of that chain number 2 he weaves in the fabric. Learning how to tell the difference, learning how to recognize that is vital. There is no other way we can escape those things but learning how to recognize truth. Truth shines a light on falsehood. And as we gain truth and understanding, as we are honest, as we turn away from dishonesty and go to honesty, we shine lights on any falsehood, any chain number 2 that's in us. In the next couple of hours, and with this manual we have in the back, we hope that you will donate $25 for a manual. It all goes to charity, 100% to 7 Pillars Foundation. We hope that you will donate $25. Take a manual home with you. This can be used in your home for your children, your youth, for your marriage, for adults, for anything you need. It's problem solving. We're going to talk about living a life of the 7 pillars. We're going to talk about addiction recovery in the breakout following that. There's 2 in a row following this keynote. We're going to talk about how you can apply this in any relationship to any problem and solve it every single time, and there's no exception to that. The chains are always weaker than the pillars, and the pillars will always unlock them if you follow the process. We'll teach you a problem-solving process. 7 steps you walk through in 2 different formats that teach you how to work with that. Our time is closing here, so let me just end on this. We have a project we're working on. I call it the High Tower Project. This actually came from a dream that I had. I dreamed that I saw this very, very high tower, and it rose way high above all the mountains. And at the top was a tower room, a round room with glass all around, and the light shined all the way around the world to everyone. And from that high tower, we were doing leadership training. We were teaching the 7 pillars. We were teaching the whole world these principles and values. Why? To prepare them for times to come. To give the whole world a choice between pillars and chains. To give the whole world understanding of how to do that, even in its most basic form. To give the whole world a chance to unite together, to draw together, bond to one another, to know who they can trust, who they can count on for peace now, and also to prepare for times in the future, which could be very, very difficult. This high tower is broadcasting. It's all forms of communication. This is the project the 7 Pillars is working on. It's the project that this manual is all about. It's the project our discussion is about right now. It's the project we will talk about and the purpose for everything we're doing the next couple of hours. We're going to use the 7 pillars to solve personal, marriage, family, community development. We're going to teach people how to draw together regardless of race, color, creed, cooperate together, love each other, work together, find the common ground principles and values in those 7 pillars among them so they can have that common ground to speak on regardless of what faith they are. It's going to happen whether we want it to or not. It's going to happen. We're going to identify pillars and chains in current events. On radio and podcasts, webinars, we'll talk about current events, about government, of all kinds of things here. And talk about the pillars and chains in those events that we deal with every day in our lives. We're going to talk about the advocates of cooperative. We advocate cooperative rather than competitive free enterprise. That's an interesting concept. To go to cooperative free enterprise, yes, own your own businesses, yes, make all the money you want, but cooperate together. Instead of competing cutthroat, every man for himself, survival of the fittest, creating poverty because it continually creates more and more scarcity among the people. No, go to cooperative free enterprise because then we teach people how to use what they're gaining, what they're obtaining, what they're amassing in their free enterprise to help one another. To help each other voluntarily, not by force, but because we want to. Thank you very much. I'm going to have to bring this to a close. We've got some things to take care of before we go on to the next. Our time is up. I love you. God loves you. He loves all of mankind. He wants us to bond together. He wants us to unite. He wants us to embrace the same values, and He wants us to survive the future coming up. This is very important. Please go to the back of the room afterward and in between different sessions and pick up a manual. We ask you to donate $25. It's normally $50, but for the conference special, please do it. Thanks so much. Help us with our High Tower project. We look forward to seeing you for the next couple of hours.